Disgraced Andrew. Yeah. So we've got some brighter news today. And I think obviously Prince Andrew being arrested is just the beginning. And it is amazing that he is the first person to face a criminal investigation in this entire circle that surrounded Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. And he is also the first royal, although kind of, not really royal because he was stripped of everything, the first royal in centuries to have been arrested. Hasn't he been released? Yeah, so he was he was arrested and then released from custody, but he is currently under he was released under investigation. So he is not off the hook. This is just how it goes for someone like him. He's arrested and then released as they investigate him. Okay, so let's I hate looking at this man's face in my stream. Yep. So let's talk about former Prince Andrew, who was arrested. He was released, but he was released under investigation. And, the thing here that I keep thinking about is, although this is a start, it's a much needed start. None of this happens without the work of Epstein survivors, including the late Virginia Giuffre, who for years have been fighting for accountability, have named these abusive men, have detailed what they endured from Epstein and Maxwell and the many powerful players in their circle. And I just kept thinking about Virginia Giuffre today when I saw this news, just thinking about how she spent years up until the final days of her life, trying to push for accountability and get justice. This does not happen. This does not happen without women like Virginia Giuffre, and it's the case every time when a powerful person is, when their crimes, when their bad behaviors are revealed, and if any justice comes about, it is always those who were victimized and were the ones who were so courageously sharing their stories and trying to hold these people accountable.
In connection with his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, I want to go straight to our foreign correspondent, James Longman.
Hi, George. Yes, extraordinary news out of the UK this morning. The former Prince Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, has this morning been arrested on the Sandringham estate where he was living after having been removed.
But is it justice for her? It seems like it's because he shared government info. Yeah, I mean, that's what they're investigating. I don't know what the full extent of the investigation is, but the reason that I said that is because I want to recognize that the wheels that were put in motion is only because of the women who have fought for it. So like, of course it's not all right here. It's there's no, what the accountability that needs, the real accountability that needs to be had is far from achieved. But this is the beginning. I mean, there are a lot of people who thought this would never happen. Never. People who have reported on Epstein, like people like Julie K. Brown, she said today that she thought this would never happen, or certainly not on this timeline. They may have more evidence for it, and the hope is that they can find out more through this process. Yeah.
Of course, from the home he was living in Windsor. The Thames
At
Valley
least it's
Police, the
something
police here in the
compared to
UK,
what's
put out a
happening to people
statement.
here in
They
the
haven't
US.
named him
Yeah.
specifically, but they are saying a man in his 60s has been arrested. As part of the investigation, they say we have today arrested a man in his 60s from Norfolk on suspicion of misconduct in public office and are carrying out searches at addresses in Berkshire and Norfolk. They say the man remains in police custody at this time. They are not, like I say, naming Andrew, but we know that it is him. This pertains to emails, we believe, that were published recently in the most recent Epstein files published by the Department of Justice, which seem to suggest, they allege that Andrew was forward.
Yeah. Also, remember, I think it was last week we talked about King Charles said that he and the royal family would be cooperating fully with the British police. That kind of signaled that potentially something was going to happen here, considering that Charles is his brother, and he had expressed that they were not going to get in the way, that the law must take its course.
Emails to Jeffrey Epstein whilst he was trade envoy here in the UK. Now, as a public official, that is misconduct. That is what the police are alleging. That's the charges that they presumably are bringing to him if they do indeed charge him. He is under arrest and remains in custody for that. We will wait and see what further details they are yet to give us. But, you know, as trade envoy, he spent more than 10 years traveling around the world on behalf of the British government to kind of foment relationships with other countries to better Britain's kind of economic outlook, if you like. That was seen as a member of the royal family could do this. You know, his status would provide Britain with that kind of heft on the world stage. But the emails from the Department of Justice suggest that when he was in these conversations in places like Singapore, Hong Kong, I've got a list here in front of me of other countries that he went to, he would then have these kind of confidential documents in these emails, and then it looks like he was forwarding them on to Jeffrey Epstein, another one here from Vietnam, another from China. So if you look at the date on some of these emails as well, that is what is interesting. One of them here in front of me from 2010. Of course, that's well after Jeffrey Epstein had already faced charges for soliciting sex from a minor. So that is...
Yeah, so between this investigation, the investigation that's currently open into Peter Mandelson's behavior and activity, it could potentially be some type of domino effect. Hopefully, still feels like the United States is operating in an even worse manner than other countries with powerful players who were associated with Epstein. But at least there's movement here. I mean, this has been years. And also Andrew Windsor, ex-prince, he lied. Like, we know he lied about having ended his relationship with Epstein, but oops, it was actually years after he said that he was no longer associated with him, that we know he still was.
It goes to the heart of this entire issue around Andrew and Epstein. The relationship that he had with that convicted sex offender went far beyond the time which he said that he had broken all contact with him. People at home might remember the disastrous interview he gave in 2019 to the BBC, where he said that he had traveled to the United States, to New York, to sever his ties with Jeffrey Epstein, that he was there to basically explain to him that he no longer wanted to be in communication with him. These emails from the Department of Justice suggest that that was not true, that he basically lied about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein in that interview. He has always denied, we should say, any wrongdoing when it comes to the allegations about sex trafficking. Virginia Giuffre, of course, the individual who alleged that she was sex trafficked by Epstein for sex with Andrew, he has denied that strenuously. We haven't had comment from him or the palace on these latest allegations about emails to Jeffrey Epstein in his position as trade envoy. But one imagines that at some point today, Buckingham Palace will have to release some kind of statement. They are yet to comment. But we are in the extraordinary situation where the brother of the king has been arrested. To my mind, that has never happened in the modern history of the royal family. Certainly, this is...
Wait, did we go over when Amy Robach, who was with ABC News at the time, she did a sit-down interview with Virginia, and it was after... So basically, the timeline was Virginia was taken advantage of by a Daily Mail reporter who pretended to be her friend, who's like, I want to tell you your story, blah, blah, blah. Of course, it's Daily Mail, fucking exploitative ass rag. They fully took advantage and presented the story in a really nasty way. And then she started to get more involved legally, was joining in with other survivors and their lawyers. And finally she said, I need to tell my story, because she at that point was already experiencing smears and was coming up against people who were trying to invalidate her story, call her a liar, call her a whore, all that. Pretty much what Michael Tracy has been nonstop doing. And what I will say is these people should be shamed out of society. Michael Tracy and all these fucking bozos should be every single day shamed out of society. They should not allowed to be in society with the rest of us. He has nonstop. This is his thing now, I guess, to call Epstein survivors liars, to smear them. He keeps smearing Virginia Giuffre, who's no longer alive. He keeps condescendingly, smugly talking about what a witch hunt this is and how 100 years from now, history will... we will look back and go, I can't believe that we were just so panicked around this whole thing. Holy shit, this man is so greasy and sweaty and just looks like a guy who should never be around women. Never. Oh my God. He is the platonic ideal of inceldom. He's so gross when it comes to women. And the way that he keeps talking, I'm like, yeah, I believe that never once in your life, if you have ever had a sexual encounter, was there real consent, because you keep saying things that make it quite clear you don't believe in coercion when it comes to sexual encounters, many of which were the kinds that Epstein victims were put into these situations. So like, I look at these guys and I go, yeah, no, I would say that you've never been a person who's had consent, because you don't believe in it. Because you're making it quite clear that victims who were sex trafficked and sexually exploited when they were minors are all liars, are all fabulous and opportunists. He somehow gets more repulsive every time I see him. Yeah, he somehow gets sweatier as he goes further down this shithole of defending Jeffrey Epstein and his accomplices and smearing the survivors. He just gets sweatier. He's I'm imagining he just starts, like, his skin just starts peeling off. But he doesn't sweat. Yeah, he looks like a sweaty person, though. I don't think Tracy thinks sexual assault or rape is real. Yeah, I think at that point that's a fair evaluation. Okay, anyway, what was I saying? Oh, Amy Robach. So Amy Robach had this interview with Virginia in 2019, or yeah, I think it was 2019, and then was told that the network executives were not going to run the story. And essentially, they tried to pretend that, or I think maybe this was before, a little bit before 2019. They tried to pretend that that Jeffrey Epstein was nobody, that nobody cared about him. They didn't even know who he was. Okay, sure. And really, they were concerned about the pressures that they would face from Epstein's powerful, Epstein's powerful associates or their circles. So Virginia had talked about Andrew in this interview with Amy Robach, and ABC essentially was concerned that they would lose access to William and Kate. They would no longer have their access if they ran this interview where she names Andrew as one of her abusers. And so they pulled they pulled the legal card. They pulled the, oh, nobody cares about this story, so why would we run it? But really it was because of internal pressures, external pressures, and not wanting to lose their access to the royal family. And this was in 2019 when Amy was caught on the hot mic saying that ABC News shut down a Jeffrey Epstein investigation. Okay, so this was 2016.
We would not put it on the air. First of all, I was told, who's Jeffrey Epstein? No one knows who that is. This is a stupid story. Then the palace found out that we had her whole allegations about Prince Andrew and threatened us a million different ways. We were so afraid we wouldn't be able to interview Kate and Will that also quashed the story. And then Alan Dershowitz was also implicated in it because of the planes. She told me everything. She had pictures. She had everything. She was in hiding for 12 years. We convinced her to come out. We convinced her to talk to us. It was unbelievable what we had. Clinton, we had everything. I tried for 3 years to get it on, to no avail, and now it's all coming out, and it's like these new revelations, and I freaking had all of it. I'm so pissed right now. Like, every day I get more and more pissed because I'm just like, oh my God, it was what we had was unreal. Other women backing it up. Hey, yep. Brad Edwards, the attorney, 3 years ago, saying there will come a day when we will realize Jeffrey Epstein was the most prolific pedophile this country has ever known. And I had it all 3 years ago.
Yeah. That's how this whole story is from front to back. Yeah.
Shaken this country. It's been a long time coming. I think many people would look at this and say Andrew should have faced justice a long time ago. Many others will say, well, this is a shock today to find that he's been arrested in this way.
It was shocking to all of us, no question about that, James. Let me bring that to Robert Jobson, our royal contributor. James just said it. To his memory, it's never happened in the modern royal family. Do you have any sense that anything like this has ever happened before?
No, they've just had minor road traffic incidents that Princess Anne was arrested over a dog. No, this is truly historic. This is seismic, George. I mean, this has serious implications for the monarchy in this country. The reality is this man still is in line.
I'm like, that shock better just be because you didn't expect any arrests because of the power of the royal family. It better not be shock in, what? How is this happening to former Prince Andrew?
But for
never forget, he was the Queen's favorite.
He could have been the man who was the king. This is really, shocking beyond belief. The police on royal estates, the fact that on his 66th birthday, no less, he's been arrested. He's now going to have to give evidence, have to give a report be interviewed under caution. So that, this is now getting to a very serious stage. This, of course, is nothing to do with the Epstein and the sex trafficking side of things. This is purely to do with the envoy.
Right, and releasing this sensitive, classified information. Forgive me if this is an uninformed question, but could something like this happen without the acquiescence of the Queen?
Well, what we do know is that it was the Queen that pushed for Andrew to be that special advisor. We do know that the current king, when he was made the special envoy after leaving the Royal Navy, made it very clear that he didn't think it was a good idea. He thought that Andrew should just focus on doing royal duties and not take on an official role until, in terms of working alongside the government in this way, until it was cleared, until he fully understand what was involved.
Mummy's
I'm sure that the king has got his
boy.
head in his hands about this at the moment. This really is a seismic moment, I've said, for the monarchy. I do believe, well, nothing like this has ever happened before. And I didn't actually think it would, even with all the pressure, that it would actually reach that stage again. This is going to be a hugely complex case. And of course, he doesn't have immunity. The king can't be tried in his courts in this country. But we have this issue here that if there's evidence that comes out here that the king knew, and the king would actually have to give evidence in a court of law, that would collapse the case, like it did, if you remember, in 2002 with the Burrell case, when the Queen suddenly remembered she'd had been told things by Burrell that he was keeping Diana's things for safekeeping. Now that led to the collapse of the case. It truly is a seismic moment for this country, and I think for the monarchy as well.
Do you think?
Look at one of the photos that was snapped of him in the back of a car. That looks like the face of someone who is realizing that his birthright, his royal birthright, may not be enough to protect him this time. He looks like a rat on ketamine. Yeah, he does. He looks... I saw someone on Twitter say he's got his father's smile. Yeah. Yeah, this rat-faced pedophile. Did you see the TMZ photo? A different one of when he was arrested? King Charles' little brother, long rumored to be Mummy's favorite, became the first senior British royal in nearly 400 years. 400 years. It's because the royals have not been doing anything wrong. That's why it's been 400 years. No, him with a toddler. Is it this photo? Or it's a different one? Oh, here's a wider pic. The last time a royal was arrested. Yeah, 400 fucking years. Andrew Windsor turned fun bags into kicks for kids in some very unprincely photos. These pics of Andrew taken back in 2011 show the then Duke of York kneeling across a young boy and rolling a ball back and forth with him. Just clean, wholesome fun until you realize the ball is painted like a breast, complete with a pink nipple protruding from it. What the fuck? These people are psychopaths. They are sick. Our sources say these pics were taken inside his Windsor residence a little more than 15 years ago. We're also told Andrew is not alone with the child. I mean, just sickening. Everything about these people is so sickening. They're so creepy. God.
Think that the king is going to have something to say about this?
Well, if he doesn't, I think he should, because I think that at the end of the day, he is not only the head of state, he is also the head.
Makes one generally wonder when the Queen found out, because if a reporter had all the info in 2016, the Queen knew even earlier. Oh, the Queen fucking knew. Yes. Lizzie, who's currently rotting in a box, yeah, she knew. She protected her favorite son. Mummy's favorite boy. she knew everything. Trust. That woman knew absolutely everything. The whole family knew that
the
shit.
nation, if you like, and he's responsible for leading the monarchy, which is part of this constitutional parliamentary democracy. The problem, of course, will be now that this is a police case, and this means a lot of this conjecture that's been going on has to stop. Now, we have to wait and see if Andrew is actually charged. Once the moment is that he's charged with anything, then, of course, all this conjecture has to stop in the media, and it becomes a police case. So that makes it difficult for the king to make.
He had to settle with Virginia. I think it was 2022. Yeah, in 2022, Andrew reached an out-of-court settlement with Virginia Giuffre to resolve the U.S. civil sexual assault lawsuit. Because remember, for a lot of survivors who were involved in trying to expose these pedophiles and abusers, their only route was civil suits. And unfortunately, the public, many members of the public still hold on to this belief that somebody who had survived sexual abuse and ends up filing a civil suit and getting money out of it, they take that as a sign that that person is an opportunist, that they're just trying to get paid. They're just trying to go after rich men and get paid, which is wrong on so many levels, namely because that is the only option that they have. That is the only option that they have. These were the same people who were not told about the non-prosecution agreement that that Jeffrey Epstein got back in 2008. They were not told about the plea deal. They were not told that, hey, Jeffrey is going to plead, he's going to plead guilty to this, which means that he and his conspirators cannot be federally charged. That was not something they were supposed to. They were supposed to be witnesses at what they thought was going to be a trial. And then we're told, oh yeah, no, that's not happening anymore.
Statement. But trust in the
Deadhead,
monarchy
thank you for the
will
10
be
months.
at an all-time low at the moment. And I think that at some stage, whether it's at the end of this or even just now, there needs to be some statement from the king and from the palace, and to make sure that people understand that this is an accountable institution that will going forward will be transparent and abide by the law. We had the Prime Minister this morning on television saying no one is above the law, and it looks like that's the case.
How serious a threat to the monarchy is this?
I think it is an
Just
existential threat.
shut it all
I think
down.
that people, the monarchy depends upon the trust of the people. It depends on for the system to operate.
Yeah, and maybe the people more and more are going, what the fuck even is that? What is it that you say you do here? Besides revel in absurd wealth that we, the taxpayers, fund your whole fucking lives. What is it that, and then use this power to protect abuse that is committed by members of the royal family? Like, what's happening here?
They are an unelected institution. It may be, if the king is involved in being seen to be part of a cover-up, that it could have serious implications for him. And maybe, I don't know, maybe what goes forward. I mean, the one couple,
Honestly,
two
take
people
them all
that
down.
clearly are clear in all of this are William and Catherine. And it's clear, it seems, that William, I remember that William, many years ago when Andrew was at the Garter ceremony, wanted to go to the Garter ceremony, and William said, look, if he's there, I'm not going. And that was like 6 years ago. And he put his foot down.
But just to be clear, this all happened when the king was Prince of Wales, and we have no evidence that Andrew and the prince were then talking about these matters.
Well, I do know, I mean, we don't have evidence, no, but I do know that it was discussed, and I do know that the King and Andrew had a meeting and talked about it, and Andrew gave his reassurances, probably similar to what he said on the BBC in that catastrophic Newsnight interview, that there was, he had nothing to hide, he hadn't done anything wrong. But I think this is a lot to do with the Epstein sexual allegations, not necessarily this stuff on his role as a misconduct in a public office. We did not know the extent of that, and we didn't know that until the Mandelson, the former Deputy Prime Minister of Britain and former a person that was the former Washington ambassador.
Andrew apparently borrowed millions from the late Queen Elizabeth to settle with his alleged victim, Virginia Giuffre, at a court. Yeah, he ain't got that money. Where do you think that came from? That came from Mummy. He had to borrow cash. And, that's coming from the taxpayers.
Until he got arrested.
From the taxpayers and the centuries of stolen wealth.
All of this has been emerging at a very fast rate. And the most important thing now is that he has to give evidence under caution. He has to give a witness statement under caution. We don't know if he's going to be charged yet. I should imagine that will take a bit of time. But, this is a very fast-moving story, George, and historic.
Let me go back to James Long. Are we learning anything new, James?
Well, I think one of the things that stands out for me, George, is that the properties that are being searched now by the police, I mean, we're in this extraordinary situation where properties belonging to the King are being searched because, remember, Prince Andrew, as he was then, was moved from the home that he lived in Windsor to the Sandringham estate, which is the private estate of the King. It's not a public palace. This is owned by the royal family privately. So you ask whether or not the King would have given his permission for this to have happened. The police arriving at the King's private estate, one imagines there must have been some kind of coordination. The royal family have in the last few weeks been very, very clear about trying to move themselves away from this entire scandal, to lean in very heavily to speaking.
Yeah, I mean, that shows you the clear power differential. You have Palestine activists still in custody on bogus terrorism charges. You have journalists being arrested. You have DHS and the FBI and other law enforcement agencies in the U.S. who are targeting all of us. They're spying on us. They're surveilling us. If you say anything bad about ICE, then you're going into one of their little databases. It's absurd. Like, it should piss you off, and you should want to do something about it. That far more people have been arrested for using their constitutional rights to protest against the government. And then they turn around and tell us, oh, well, we just don't have enough evidence there's really nothing here to prosecute. We're open to down the line, if something pops up, to having some investigation, maybe some charges, something, but we just can't, we don't know. There's just nothing right now. And Palestine Action Proscription is illegal now. Yes, and it's not just Palestine Action activists who are still in custody. It's that they've passed laws to make it so that more people will be prosecuted for things like speaking negatively about Israel. Yes, and this is power working as power has been designed. This is what people need to see. Palestine Action wins High Court challenge over government's terror ban. The decision to ban the group was unlawful and a disproportionate interference with the Human Rights Act, specifically the freedom of expression and freedom of assembly. The government said it intends to take the case to the Court of Appeal. Yeah, I mean, look, Palestine advocates like Mahmoud Khalil and Ozturk and others whose stories we became aware of over the last year because of how unlawfully they were targeted. Like they've been hounded by the state. They are trying to do everything to make examples out of them. Even wearing a t-shirt or carrying a sign with the group's name on it can carry a 6-month sentence. The ban had resulted in nearly 3,000 unlawful arrests and claimed it was always about appeasing pro-Israel lobby groups and weapons manufacturers and nothing to do with terrorism. She said the ban still allowed people to protest peacefully in support of Palestinians. The ban was disproportionate as it interfered with the Human Rights Act, specifically the freedom of expression and freedom of assembly. Ugh, yeah, I mean, just the obvious double standard here. I mean, how much the state does everything they can to protect people in power and everything they can to punish and deter future protest. The way that they go after everyday people. There was an independent documentary some people I know made called "To Kill a War Machine" about Palestine action that also got banned because of this. Yeah. There is so much censorship that is happening constantly. There are so many attempts as more and more people woke up to the evils of America and the United States and all these governments that are complicit in the worst crimes against humanity. As people woke up and went, yeah, what the fuck? I don't support this. They went even harder on trying to quell that dissent. They are trying to put it back in the box. And that's why they go after anyone, but in particular those who are most vulnerable, and try and make an example out of them. They're trying to chill speech. They're trying to deter other protests.
About the Epstein survivors, when asked about this, and Camilla.
And that's why people need to realize the state is not there to protect you. Power is not there to protect you. Power protects power. That's what it does. I know we say it all the time, but people protect people. We protect one another.
Charles, Edward, they've all been heckled in public spaces, asked about Andrew. They can feel the pressure over this, and time again, they have directed people to looking at the Epstein victims and saying that their hearts are with them, that the focus should be on them. So that is the palace's way of saying that we're on their side and that perhaps Andrew, they're going to cooperate with the police in as much as they can. But they are hamstrung here. You know, the King Charles, and as much as his effort will now be to try to save the monarchy, because make no bones about it, that is what this will be about for Buckingham Palace. At the same time, he's hamstrung because this is now a police investigation, so he will be limited in what he can say. And that is why I think whenever they are asked, they do say, well, our hearts are with the Epstein victims. Once again, we should separate what's happened here from the crimes that Epstein committed. This is about the relationship that Andrew seems to have had with Epstein beyond that, and the relationship that he had when he was trade envoy, sharing government secrets, perhaps, with Jeffrey Epstein as late as 2010. Nevertheless, the royal family knows about the optics of all this, and they will want to show that they are on the side of the public, not on Andrew's side.
And James, Robert Jobson said this is an existential threat, perhaps to the monarchy. We also know with these revelations about Peter Mandelson, the former trade minister, former ambassador to the United States for the UK, that this could also be a threat to the current British government.
Absolutely. Peter Mandelson was at the heart of the Labour movement. He was part of the Labour government with Tony Blair. He built Labour alongside Tony Blair and was in the Labour government at a time when he also seems to have been in communication with Jeffrey.
I want to think here that the reason this is their investigatory angle is because they just think they have a better chance, but that this could potentially widen and will include Andrew's participation in Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking operation, in his predatory actions, in his crimes against women and girls.
Epstein sharing information with him as business envoy, and that for possibly, allegedly, financial gain on behalf of Peter Mandelson. So this goes to the heart of British institutions writ large, the monarchy and the British government. Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister here, is fighting for his political life, make no bones about it. I mean, he's already in a very weak position politically, but his adversaries here in Britain, his political adversaries, have smelled blood with this Mandelson scandal. They're waiting perhaps later, and we have local elections here later in the year, when perhaps Keir Starmer might end up losing his position as Prime Minister as a result directly of this Epstein scandal, because of the closeness that he's perceived to have had with Peter Mandelson and his decision to make him ambassador to the United States. So on every level, Britain is being rocked by the Epstein scandal, George.
James Longman, thanks very much. As Robert Jobson said, seismic news out of the United Kingdom this morning. The former Prince Andrew has been arrested. We're going to return.
Okay, this is really random and has nothing to do with what we're talking about here, but I just want to point it out as an example because I think it's really illuminating. So there was this account that I followed, that we mutually followed each other on Twitter, and they posted a lot about Palestine and other social and political issues. And I noticed that they had been hacked. They were posting crypto shit and even sending out DMs that it's all a scam. Anyway, I just saw that they have completely taken over this account now. They have changed the profile photo. They have changed let me just show you. This is a good way to understand how this shit works. Okay. And it looks like they've locked their account. So this is not this person. OMG, yes, I follow them too. I saw this today. Yeah, I don't know how you get your account back at this point, but this is all fake, and you can look at it and immediately go, yeah, this is sus as hell. Crypto mentor. All, this smorgasbord of crypto and tech titles in the bio. But because you'll look at this and go, what? They're followed by people that I follow, and like follows me. I followed. And this happens so often, and they basically just steal these accounts and take them over, and they are pure scams. Pure scams. I've already had my Steam account hacked like that before. That sucks. Yeah. And it's also terrible too, because if you scroll down, you can see the previous reposts and tweets from this person whose account it actually was. Like, if you go, what the fuck? Why are there random tweets about being trans and non-binary and fuck ICE, and then what is this shit? Nothing changes if nothing changes. Just remember, change is required to adapt to the lifestyle you need, not want. Peace to the old life. I'm so confused what account is that. I'm trying to remember what their account name was. It was like they, them, skeleton, something like that. But I started following them a couple years ago because they posted a lot about Palestine. And then I noticed that they had been clearly hacked and their account was posting crypto shit. Oh, they, them might be giants. Yes. Yes, thank you. They, them might be giants. Do you think they sold their account to anyone? No, absolutely not. No, I think this was a total hack and scam takeover. And anyway, just to give you an example on how this shit works. Ray was lucky to get her YouTube account back when this happened to her a few years ago. Yeah, I live in terror of this happening to me. I've really locked down on platforms like Twitter, just how I've made it a lot harder to hack. Thank you to Nico. Thank you to Nico for walking me through everything. But yeah, it is something that I'm like, I know people are trying to hack into my account all the time. And it scares the shit out of me. Don't click on links, email, DMs, etc. Yeah, don't click on any of that shit. What's the password? Boobs, obviously. $100 phishing link fail rate. I've gotten better though. Okay. I have learned from the past. One time at a house party, I was playing Spotify on the speakers in the house and it changed to suddenly all Latin music. And I was like, what the fuck? And it was hacked. Damn. They were just like, we don't like your music. Let me offer you something better. Two-factor authorization, get a password manager. Yes. And don't do two-factor through the actual don't put your phone number in. This is what Nico was telling me. He's like, do not have your phone number for two-factor. Use something like 1Password or one of these other authenticators that you can keep your passwords in, and it will generate a code. So it'll give you a really, really long, complex password and then a code. So that is just even having that in place is going to really reduce your account being targeted. Just venting right now, but Australian of the Year Grace Tame is coming to my town to speak, and the crazies are trying to harass her for supporting Palestine. Well, then you got to harass the crazies back. And yeah, don't save your passwords in your notes app. Do not do that. Do not do that. Okay. Anyway, to go back to the Andrew Windsor of it all, I wanted to share the statement from Virginia Giuffre's family. These are her siblings and their spouses. Virginia Giuffre, who should be here today and is not, sadly. And as she described Andrew's entitlement towards her and other victims who were trafficked to him, she wrote in her memoir, "It was as if he believed having sex with me was his birthright." Here's what her family said on her behalf. "At last today, our broken hearts have been lifted at the news that no one is above the law, not even royalty. On behalf of our sister, Virginia Roberts Giuffre, we extend our gratitude to the UK's Thames Valley Police for their investigation and the arrest of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor." Sky and Amanda Roberts and Danny and Lynette Wilson said, "He was never a prince. For survivors everywhere, Virginia did this for you." And I appreciated that Vanity Fair back in October had published parts of Virginia's memoir, Nobody's Girl. This is a really difficult book to read. If you decide to read this, I will tell you, you should probably take breaks because it's really excruciating. And especially as you read it and you remember that Virginia is dead, that she is not here. Okay, I wanted to read this part when she talks about Andrew. swear this was in. Am I crazy? I swear that this was in Vanity Fair. Let me see. Thought it was. Maybe I read. Maybe it was in another. It was in another part that I read, but I can just pull it up too. Hold on a second. Okay. Also, the reason that we have that photo that everyone has seen, this one here, where it is Ghislaine Maxwell, Andrew, and a young Virginia Giuffre, is because she had this camera and Jeffrey Epstein took this photo. And luckily, she thought to get this developed and had this picture for years. And this is one of the photos that has been seen by a lot of people. It's been used in a lot of reporting around Epstein and how it directly shows that Andrew was at one point with Virginia Giuffre, the photographic evidence. Okay, here's the part in her book where she talks about the first time that she was forced to have sex with Andrew. After a bit more small talk, the four of us headed out into the cold spring air. The prince rode with his security detail. Epstein, Maxwell, and I were in a separate car. We went to a restaurant for dinner and afterward to an exclusive London nightclub called Tramp. The prince went to the bar and came back with a cocktail for me. Then he invited me to dance. He was sort of a bumbling dancer, and I remember he sweated profusely. I had another drink, and the prince did too. We then headed back to Maxwell's again in two cars. On the way, Maxwell told me, when we get home, you are to do for him what you do for Jeffrey, which was something that was directed to Virginia and other victims. They would be told, you need to do for this man what you do for Jeffrey. No questions asked. We then headed back to Maxwell's. Maxwell said, when you get home, you're to do for him what you do for Jeffrey. I knew better than to question her orders. That empty feeling descended upon me again. More and more, it felt like my default state. Back at the house, Maxwell and Epstein said goodnight and headed upstairs, signaling it was time that I take care of the prince. In the years since, I've thought a lot about how he behaved. He was friendly enough, but still entitled, as if he believed having sex with me was his birthright. I took him first to a bathroom where I drew him a hot bath. We disrobed and got in the tub, but we didn't stay there long because the prince was eager to get to the bed. Another part of this that stands out to me is earlier in the chapter when Maxwell says to Andrew, like, guess how old she is. Guess how old she is. And he correctly guessed that she was 17. And the reason for why he knows that is he cites the fact that he has daughters who are just a little bit younger than Virginia. So as far as this whole, men, don't you have daughters? Don't you care about women and girls because you have wives and mothers and daughters and women in your life? They don't give a fuck. In fact, a lot of these men in Virginia's recollection of her experiences had daughters and talked about how she was around their daughter's age. Like, it's so fucking sick. Okay, so she says his birthright, I took him first to a bathroom. He was particularly attentive to my feet, caressing my toes and licking my arches. That was a first for me, and it tickled. I was nervous he would want me to do the same to him, but I needn't have worried. He seemed in a rush to have intercourse. Afterward, he said thank you in his clipped British accent. In my memory, the whole thing lasted less than half an hour. The next morning, it was clear that Maxwell had conferred with her royal chum because she told me, "You did well. The prince had fun." I nodded appreciatively, as I always did, but in truth, I didn't feel so great. Soon Epstein would give me $15,000 for servicing the man that the tabloids called Randy Andy. Oh yeah, that used to be his nickname. Randy Andy. Which was a lot of money. But while being pimped out to strangers was something I thought I had to endure and had even become used to, it was wearing me down. When I was sure I couldn't be overheard, I called Tony and told him what had happened. I hadn't wanted to have sex with the prince, I said, but I felt like I had to. Our livelihoods depended on it for one thing, but I also truly believe there was no way for me to free myself from Epstein and Maxwell's grip. While traveling, Maxwell had made me hand over my passport. Yeah, that was something that Jolene would do, according to multiple victims, is that she would take their passports, and other things that were clearly a threat, that were clearly part of the coercion and manipulation at play. While traveling, Maxwell had made me hand over my passport. That night, Tony's voice sounded worried. He was scared that I was alone in a foreign country with people so powerful. He said he understood why I felt powerless. Less than 4 years earlier, Lady Diana had died in a car accident, prompting some conjecture that was never proven that the royal family had somehow been involved. Tony and I had no way of knowing if this was true, but we were sure that I was surrounded by people who wielded vastly more clout than I ever would. After a few more minutes of trying to soothe each other's paranoia, we said goodnight, but not before Tony and I agreed that, especially while I was abroad, I needed to keep Epstein and Maxwell happy. After we returned to Florida, I took my FunSaver cameras to a 1-hour photo developer near my house in West Palm Beach. Thanks to the store's system of marking the back of each print, I can tell you exactly the date I first held the image of me, Prince Andrew, and Maxwell in my hands, March 13th, 2001. I showed the 4x6-inch photo to Tony. At the time, we were both just glad I'd made it home in one piece. We had no idea what a commotion this photo would later cause. And that is the picture there. Surfs TV. Thank you so much, Lance. Thank you for the raid. Hello, everyone. We have been talking about the news over in the UK with Andrew Windsor, previously known as Prince Andrew, but stripped of his titles, which happened just last year. So who knows what the situation could be a year from now. Hopefully this man is behind bars. Humanist Report, thank you for the raid. Oh, sorry, triple raid. Matt Binder, thank you for the raid. Humanist Report, thank you for the raid. And Surfs TV, thank you for the raid. Thank you for the triple raid. Have seen a ton of people checking out her book at work in the library in my pretty conservative part of Nashville. I saw multiple people checking it out today, some that I thought never would take this seriously. I think this is a very important book for people to read who still have this cultural mindset that lays the blame on victims. And there are many points in the book that Virginia and the woman that helped her to write this book painstakingly explain why, like from an abused person's mindset, why you might return to a situation like this, why you don't leave, why you are in fact trapped. And there's a lot of points that she'll go, I know that people who are reading this will probably say, why did you go back? Who have discredited me because of this story in the Daily Mail when I thought this reporter was on my side. And I thought, when they paid me for the use of the photo with Andrew, I thought that was normal. I thought that people got paid for this kind of stuff. But a lot of these things over the years was used to discredit her testimony and her experiences. And there's one part too. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah. Also, these people, Maxwell and Epstein, all of them, they were not just the victims were not just aware of their money and their power because they saw it with their own two eyes. They were aware because that was used to threaten them. That was used to keep them quiet. They were blackmailed. They were manipulated. They were threatened. Like, this should not be hard to understand. It should not be hard to have a baseline of empathy here where you get why somebody who was abused from when they were a child, which was the case with a lot of the girls who were targeted, that they were, from impoverished backgrounds, that they were victims of, that they had been raped and molested and abused as children, like that they were living on the streets, that they did not have a stable home life. And that was why often they were the perfect targets for these sickos. Like, yeah, you think that somebody who was molested by their father and then suffered a series of just really terrible events in addition, which then led to being a prime target to be sexually exploited by Epstein and Maxwell. Weren't there also parents that traded their kids in for money? Well, one part of Virginia's book, she was told that back in 2000, when she had first started working as a 16-year-old masseuse, she didn't have any experience. She was not training as a masseuse. When she started working for Epstein, that he paid her dad off. And she talks about the part when finally years later as an adult, and she finally cuts her father off. And one of the last things that she said to him was, I know that Epstein paid you. I know that Epstein paid you all those years ago because it was clear that I was being raped and exploited, and they paid you to allow it to happen. It's really fucked up. Anyway, I'm trying to find this one part of the book where she, so it's after the first time that after the first time that she is brought to Epstein's and is raped by him and also Maxwell. And then, okay, here it is. So many young women, myself included, have been criticized for returning to Epstein's lair even after we knew what he wanted from us. How can you complain about being abused? Some have asked, when you could so easily have stayed away. If you didn't like feeling dirty, you could simply have never gone back. But that stance wrongly discounts what many of us had been through before we encountered Epstein, as well as how good he was at spotting girls whose wounds made them vulnerable to him. Several of us had been molested or raped as children. Many of us were poor or even homeless. Before meeting Epstein, one of his victims had watched her father beat an 8-year-old boy to death. Another was present when her boyfriend killed himself. We were girls who no one cared about, and Epstein pretended to care. At times, I think he even believed he cared. A master manipulator who excelled at divining the desires of others, he threw what looked like a lifeline to girls who were drowning, girls who had nothing, girls who wished to be and do better. If they wanted to be dancers, he offered dance lessons. If they aspired to be actors, he said he would help them get roles. If they said the only thing they yearned to do was paint, he bought them canvases and introduced them to key people in the art world. And then he did his worst to them. I mean, yeah, Why is this hard to understand that people who often are on the fringes of society, who are invisible except to those who prey on them, who are vulnerable and have already been through the ringer by the time they are teenagers, that those are the type of people who are easily targets. And remember that a lot of what Epstein and his powerful circle would do is promise this opportunity. And of course, there was the trade-off. There was the transactional element. And it's the way that Harvey Weinstein abused so many people for years, and no one did anything about it, although he was a known monster, because he was a gatekeeper and because he had not just the ability to make your dreams come true, he had the ability to destroy them as well. He had the ability to ruin your entire life. And that was understood. That was made very clear. So it's not just the promise of opportunity, it is the promise of retribution. It is the promise of total fucking destruction. Relatable, and for so many too, so many been failed for many decades. Abusers love the vulnerable, under-resourced, and already abused and neglected. Yeah. I mean, honestly, this was, as I've shared my own stories of being in the entertainment industry, and I think two things that protected me. One, I did not move to Los Angeles until I was 24 years old. Still young, but certainly not 17, 18, like a lot of young girls are who move out here, right after high school. Sometimes they drop out of high school, so they're even younger, and they come to Los Angeles. The other thing was that I came from a stable home life. Like I had that family stability. I had adults who had cared for me throughout my life, and who had just provided safety in a way that a lot of girls who end up targets, who end up in these sexually exploitative situations, don't have. Having a support system like that was really important. And there were definitely times that I would find myself in a situation where it was clear that in order to advance, in order to quote unquote have my dreams come true, the requirement was sex. But because I was older, I was in my 20s, and because I had just resources and a support system that a lot of people don't have, I was able to advocate for myself and just kind of navigate those situations that didn't end up leaving me in a really vulnerable position. One of the most disgusting guys I've seen online through all this is Michael Tracy. I cannot say what I want to happen to Michael Tracy, but every time I see him, which is all the time because he won't shut the fuck up. But every time I just, in my mind, he's been a gross guy for a long time. He is so fucking vile. No woman, no person should go near this man. No one. When you're used to abuse, it's easier to think, well, I've been through worse, and get stuck dealing with an awful situation. When you are accustomed to abuse, you do not recognize red flags in the same way that someone who that's not been normalized for them does. Because to you, that is normal. Someone like Virginia Giuffre, by the time she ended up in Epstein's grasp, she had already been abused by her father, by her father's friend, by when she was forced into this like juvenile facility, so much abuse that went on there, and that eventually shut down, raped by strangers. I mean, she had even been trafficked by what's his name, another sex trafficker who was arrested in Florida. His name's not Epstein, but it's oh god, it's like something similar to that. Was first trafficked. She was 15 years old. No, this was, and then of course later she found out that Epstein knew who this guy was. What is Ron Eppinger? See, I told you it was similar. Yeah, Ron Eppinger, who was eventually arrested. He was a sex trafficker in Miami. And he was the first trafficker before Epstein and Maxwell who abused Virginia Giuffre. So again, by the time she gets to Maxwell and Epstein, and they force her into this world, this was her norm. I mean, to hear her talk about when she goes to the house for the first time, which was all pink, Epstein's mansion in Florida, which was 2 miles from Mar-a-Lago, it was a disgusting pink color, like the carpets, the exterior of the house, because as he said to her, pink is pussy and pussy is the best. Like he painted the color, had this house painted the color of pink because of pussy. Yeah. And so she gets there. She thinks she's there for a job interview. It's going to change her life. Like finally, this will put her on a path that she can leave her, she can leave everything else behind. It is a new start. And of course, that was the first time that she was raped by Epstein and Maxwell. And as she recalls this first experience, she said to herself, is the only thing that people will ever want from me is sex. And she said her conscience was like, yeah, no shit. That's all you have to offer in this world. That essentially she was like, this is my lot in life. Like there is no escaping this. She was 16 years old at the time. And she talks about how it had been so normalized. It had happened so often that she had been sexually abused and that it just felt like, I guess this is how it goes. And so maybe this is a way for me to, maybe because this is the only path for me and I don't have anything else, I can try and make something of myself through this world. It's really heartbreaking. You know that tweet that was like, men should start out in prison and have to prove their way? I think about that at times like this. Apparently the guy who snuck onto Epstein's island said the island was visible from the Virgin Islands, said everyone there knew. Yes, people knew. And I don't want to place too much blame on the employees, of which there were many who were employed by Epstein, but there were so many people who knew. the fact that Epstein required the girls to be naked when they were on the island. So they were walking around. I mean, Virginia was 16, 17 years old, walking around, as were other girls who were brought there. And there were chefs. There were, when I say I don't want to place too much blame, it's because obviously they're kind of lower on the totem pole. Like the staff that was complicit, because they were a part of this, they were part of this world. They were employed by Epstein. They fucking saw so many of these girls. I mean, even in Epstein's home in Paris, there were pictures covering the walls of naked girls. Like, he was proud of it. It was a point of pride, of bragging rights for him. So again, what really needs to be stressed here always is this type of shit does not happen behind closed doors in the way that people think it does. And that is because when you have that much wealth and power and people around you enable your behavior because they're being paid to, because they're getting something out of you, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that shit in the shadows. It's part of having that much power that you believe you are invincible, that you're like, nothing is going to happen to me. Why would anything happen to me when I own this world? I mean, he would tell Virginia, I own the Palm Beach Police Department. So when she first was recruited into his world, he not only threatened her brother and other family members she cared about, he was like, if you try to say anything about this, no one will care because you're you and I'm me and I own this police department. Like, you think if you get it in your mind to go report what's happening here, well, I'm just letting you know that you're gonna be shit out of luck. A lot of people are learning how power propagates. I mean, this is the type of cultural stuff that Kat and I were talking about, where, look, policies, laws are always going to follow cultural changes. It is on all of us now to really understand that this is how power works, to understand how abuse operates, that until we stop laying the blame on victims of abuse, until we stop believing that the priority is to protect abusers, particularly when they are when they are powerful, when they are seen as great contributors to our world. Until that happens, we can't expect any legal or political changes. It's kind of like the police and Disney pedos. Abusers work there because they're given explicit power of the victims and then protected. You don't work there by accident. He would hire people from St. Thomas to work on his island, and they talked. Everyone on St. Thomas knew it's just like a few hundred yards away from St. Thomas. You could easily swim to it. Yeah, I mean, and I think all the time about, Naomi Campbell. Naomi Campbell's 31st birthday party is where this picture comes from. This one where you see Virginia, who looks like a child. And she talked about that she met Naomi. Naomi didn't give a fuck about her. Nobody did. But it's like, man, does anyone think to themselves, hey, what is this child doing with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell? Why is there a child at a birthday party where people are decades older? She was the youngest person. She was the youngest person by a wide margin. Like that's a baby. And that's the other thing is that we have to start now. I'm not saying like go out and everybody be a cop, because we have an issue with people being cops and surveilling everyone and I don't know, all the fucking spying that you're doing on people who are just trying to mind their own business. However, I think a big part of the story here is like how many people saw Virginia and saw these other girls and nobody did anything. There's a difference between protecting children and being a cop. Right. Like, please don't go do the whole true crime brain thing. But the reason that this kind of abuse proliferates and happens out in the open is because it's normalized, because when you've got rich people and they're hanging out with, you've got rich men in their 50s who frequently are surrounded by young women and girls. Like that's just how it goes. For so long, people were using her specifically to say, oh, well, not everyone who flew on his plane were involved. Naomi Campbell did. No, Naomi Campbell has connections here that I think need to be investigated. The amount of times that she has popped up, how she was, I think she plays a part in this world that is much more nefarious than people have wanted to believe. Like there was a girl on TikTok who was talking about how she met Naomi once and it was the most bizarre interaction and she felt like Naomi was trafficking her. She felt like Naomi was attempting to force her into a situation similarly to what happened with Maxwell being a head recruiter for Epstein, but also that he had a lot of women around him who were the recruiters. That's a really sick part of the story. And some of those women were abused by Epstein when they were younger. And so it's kind of, a more complicated question of their complicity, because Virginia, she was also, she talks about that she recruited, and granted, she was still at that point, she was still being abused, but women who were in their 20s and older who were assistants to Epstein or other employees of his, some of them had been sexually abused by him, but others, it was like women were used because that was something that allowed these girls to let their guards down. Even when Ghislaine Maxwell was participating in the abuse alongside Epstein, Virginia talks about how she still felt like when the first time Ghislaine wasn't there was an extra layer of fear that she felt being alone with him. So it's like, it's just so insidious. Not one person asked if these girls need help. No. Mm-mm. These old men have also ruined going out to places with my dad. I would be a teenager at some place with my dad, and the customer service people would think I was his young girlfriend or something. I mean, there's the whole game of daddy or father, where you see an older man with a younger woman. You're like, is that her dad or is that her daddy? Because how often do we see much older men dating women who are barely 18? Her thinking about the idea that having Maxwell around would be more comforting. Yes, as she recognized too that Maxwell was the one who preyed on her initially and was also abusing her. Like the first time that Virginia was raped by Jeffrey Epstein, she was also raped by Maxwell. And yet still, Maxwell, being a woman, gave her, while acknowledging that she was not safe, gave her still a little feeling of security, as opposed to when she was not there the first time that she had to be with Jeffrey alone. I never really liked Naomi. She was always too catty towards others, just trying to get by and live their life for me, and that chip on her shoulder about being famous and wealthy. Naomi Campbell has always struck me as somebody who could not wait to pull up the ladder behind her. That she holds no solidarity for anyone else. And she very much so has an individualistic, opportunistic mindset